Hello and welcome to my video all about how to do the whip stitch along a hem. I find whip stitch the fastest and easiest method of hemming, and today I'm going to be demonstrating it by sewing down a double fold hem. Although whip stitch isn't the most invisible stitch on the right side of the fabric, it is fast, convenient and a great all-purpose stitch to know. Whip stitch is always easily recognisable because they're just short diagonal stitches. The first thing you need to do is take a piece of thread, feed one end through a needle and knot the other end. I just did a regular single knot, and the needle I'm using is just a regular hand sewing needle. I'm using a size 8 crochet thread in red. However, unless you're doing whip stitch for decorative purposes, you'll want a thread that matches the fabric you're using and therefore blends in, and you'll most likely want to use a regular sewing thread, which will be finer than the one I'm using. Okay, so to begin, I feed the needle from inside the double hem. I bring the needle through the fabric to the front, near the edge of the hem, and pull the thread through. This encloses the knot inside the hem, therefore hiding it from view. You can do an extra knot to make it more secure if you wish, but it's not necessary. I'm now going to turn the hem back on itself so that the right sides of the fabric are in contact with each other, like so. I like to hold the fabric like this when hemming because I find it gives me more control, but it's completely up to you how you do it. I like to arrange the fabric so that the hem sticks up a little bit higher than the main body of the fabric, with the main body of the fabric being what's closest to me, and the hem being the folded over section away from me. I move my needle a short distance to the left along the hem, and then I go through all the layers from this side to the hem side. So straight through all the layers. In terms of measurements, whip stitches are normally between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch long, and the distance in between the stitches is completely up to you and depends on what you're using the whip stitch for. If you're sewing somewhere that's going to be under high stress, then you'll want the whip stitches to be closer together, because when stitches are closer together, they're stronger. On the other hand, if you're basically basting a hem together, then you can have whip stitches that are as far apart as 1 inch. Personally, I wouldn't advise having whip stitches more than 1/2 inch apart, and I would say the default that I use is about 1/4 of an inch apart. So you push the needle through all the layers as close to the edge of the main body of fabric as you can. Then you pull the thread tight. And really that's all there is to it. You bring the needle to the front again and push it through all the layers to the back. And again, move slightly to the left and push the needle through all the layers. The most important thing is to try and keep the stitches consistent and to try and space them out evenly. Then bring the needle to the front and repeat. In terms of improving your stitches, the best thing you can do is to try and make them as invisible as possible on the front side of the fabric. In order to do this, the aim is to pick up as little fabric as you possibly can on the main body of the fabric without compromising the strength. So for instance, you can't just pick up one thread of the fabric because that's likely to break. But just a few threads might be ideal, depending on the weight of the fabric. The amount of the hem edge that you pick up with your needle doesn't matter as much because that part of the stitch isn't visible from the front of the fabric. However, really, I wouldn't stress about it too much, because the main advantage of the whip stitch is that it's quick and easy and convenient. So you don't really want to be fussing about with picking up as little fabric as you can when you're trying to just stitch quickly, especially if you're using a thread that matches your fabric and therefore will blend in well on the front anyway. So that's really all there is to the whip stitch. When I've finished stitching, I normally just do a knot on the hem edge rather than the main body of the fabric. I simply take my needle up through the edge of the hem, tighten until there's only a small loop of thread remaining, and then feed the needle through that loop and tighten. And that creates a knot. And I usually just do that one more time. So up through the edge of the hem, tighten until there's just a loop, go through the loop and tighten. I then normally feed my needle down inside the hem and then out the side of the hem before cutting off the excess thread. And that's it, that's all there is to the whip stitch. I hope you found this video useful, and thank you very much for watching.